talking about the last one. I'm talking about what you're proposing and what
Oh,
we're
I know.
anticipating.
It needs to be done, Darren. We're not,
have a lo- we
we're
have a
not
lot of-
unrealistic here. We're not.
We have a lot of needs, let's just put it that
We're
way.
not trying to be greedy.
Well,
The only thing I will sit there and tell you, boy, this thing's really loud tonight.
It is, it echoes.
Wow, I never hear it like this at the council meeting, but anyway, that's all right. We did ask, I've met with Darren and John Nilgis and Sal Maniaci, and we all sat down and kind of went back over the list that Darren had provided. Without getting in, I mean, I can talk a little bit about some of the things that we'd cut. I guess the biggest thing that what we're trying to do is, and I approached Darren, and I know that he said that this idea had been talked about in the past, was to go ahead and use maybe the auditorium or the pool complex, depending upon the building itself, somehow maybe turn, and we'd originally started the conversation about using the auditorium for the parks office every day, doing some modifications to that building, get an everyday user into that building so that it doesn't just sit there vacant most of the time. And then obviously we'd like to go ahead and do some upgrades to the building itself, the HVAC system, as well as insulation and a lot of other things. So they were all kind of combined within that list. And Dan and Jeff and Susan's been at a couple of the meetings, and so what we did was we revised that. So I believe Darren had asked the board to take a look at redoing the existing office, et cetera, and adding on storage space, et cetera. We looked at it as a combination of moving your office. We're already going to redo that auditorium. Why don't we redo that for some office space, et cetera, and utilize that. And then also work that into the aquatic complex and what we could go ahead and redo that. We are working on some plans. We're going to have a workshop for the committee this last Tuesday. Well, I don't know. I don't have the calendar in front
It's
of
the
me.
19th.
19th, thank you. Tuesday, December 19th at 1 o'clock. I'd invite all of you to go ahead and be there for that meeting if you like. But that's when they're going to have really a workshop on just the aquatic complex. That does appear to be the main ticket item that so far that's been addressed with the Capital Improvement Sales Tax Committee, or at least the highest priced item as far as that goes. We did reduce that down from about 7.5, which is what was asked for, down to about 6.35 at this time. But that could change too after that workshop that we have on the 19th. So we've looked at that. There's a couple other items I will tell you, and I'll just make some comments. They've got another meeting Tuesday where we'll talk. They did ask us to go ahead and go through the list and come up with must-haves and then wants, and then also they also asked us to go ahead and take a look at if it needed to be, if it was maintenance, they wanted to kind of separate that out from new items. And we've been trying to be very aware of the fact of not considering new buildings and new facilities that would cause us more maintenance and more down the road, I guess. But we've already got an auditorium, it's sitting out there, and we need to do some maintenance to that. So that gets back to that whole discussion. But so, for example, various roofing projects, there was a comment made at the last one that, you know, that's maintenance, and they don't really feel that that should necessarily go ahead and be on the capital improvement sales tax list of things. They're not saying that it doesn't need to be done, but they just don't think that that's something that should go ahead and be a capital improvement item. The Phoenix Park Playground, or Pavilion projects, I think we kept that at $200,000. There was a Phoenix Park Playground. That got reduced from $500,000 to $250,000. Skate Park Phase 2, that's still in there at this time. It was at $150,000, and I think the Phase 2 was $150,000. Burger Park restoration, they did drop that from the list. They didn't feel that at this time that that was necessary. And as you all know, we do have civic groups around town that can go ahead and help with some of these projects, and that was part of what to make the cuts as well. Hillerman tennis courts, we did have two competing uses for that. The Fair Board presented and it's my understanding that they had not discussed this with the Park Board. I had asked Darren Dunkel about that, and Darren told me that no, that had never really even been discussed with the Parks Department. But they had a building that they wanted to go ahead and do over there by the Hillerman tennis courts and redo the restrooms, rebuild, and I can't remember the square footage. Do you remember? Was it 5,000?
Yeah, that was like 3 or 3,500.
Okay, 3,500 square foot. Yeah, that was 5 at one time, and I think they dropped it back a little bit. But it had a hefty price tag on it of 1.6. And then Darren came and proposed to go ahead and resurface the tennis courts to go ahead and for various uses, et cetera. And so we kept that in there at 150,000. It was originally asked for 200,000. The Runsick Field irrigation, we kind of rolled that in with the request from the American Legion. Right now, the American Legion is requesting, let me get my sheets here, apologize. I think they were asking for a total of about 360,000. We had kind of made the suggestion that maybe we gave them 350,000. That included the money for the irrigation for all of that. They've also given us some support documentation. I haven't gone over that with Kent Getzey yet, but we can sit down, and Darren and I will also sit down with him and talk about that. So that building that the Fair Board wanted, again, it's still on the list, but I don't know that there's really a lot of support amongst the committee for that. We'll have to wait and see as they go through the projects, but it is a hefty price tag on that. Krog Park, we cut that in half. There was a playground that was proposed on there of 150,000. We proposed 75. Sign replacements, we took that off. There was 25,000 there where they had proposed to go ahead and take those off. We could go to the civic organizations. It's, again, something that they felt that they could assist us with. The one that took another big hit that we talked about was the Riverfront Park project. I think the city recognizes that we need to do something with the lot down there and turn it from gravel to asphalt, et cetera. They just didn't know that we needed to spend $775,000 on it. So, and we realized that there were some other components to that. You had the amphitheater, thank you, and then I think what else?
Amphitheater, a restroom, a plaza area, an overlooked area.
So the
an
stuff,
extension of a trail.
right, so stuff that we wanted to focus on, I guess, was redoing the parking lot definitely, and then also doing something with the restrooms down there at that. We could use the well house down there. That was another thought, that we could go ahead and maybe add restrooms on at that facility versus what's down there today, but we can always discuss that. But that's part of the reason why that got dropped down to 250,000. And I think that was pretty much through the list, unless I'm missing anything. The Fair Board did two other projects that they had proposed. One was the main stage roof structure, which they had an estimate of $400,000. And then the other item was perimeter fencing around the fairgrounds, and that had a price tag of $100,000 on it, and that would be permanent fencing around the main stage out there, et cetera. The thought process on that, and I think that the committee pretty much, I don't want to speak on behalf of the committee, but I think they did think that that was probably something that was necessary if you want to go ahead and use that main stage more often. I think part of the reason why we don't have more events that use that main stage is that they have to provide that fencing then if they want to go ahead and charge admission to use the facility. So that would definitely benefit that. That's really all my report, unless you have any questions or...
So Darren, what you were just saying, so the stage part got shut down, but the fence on there?
No. The main roof structure is still on there. We haven't... Let me just say this. The committee's not done going through the list. What we did was, I thought it was unfair to go back and ask we had $26 million of projects based upon everybody's presentations, and about 13 million of it was due from the parks. We did not think it was to put that type of burden on the committee. So I sat down with Darren and John Nilgis and Sal, and we went back through that list and cut about 6 million at least out of it. We're also going to come up with, like I said, they've asked us to take a look at the list again, and they can make some more cuts after we provide them with, again, whether they're wants, needs, whether it's more maintenance versus an actual capital item.
And what was,
So my point is, they're not done. Their homework isn't done yet, but we helped them out by cutting 6 million off the top.
okay, what was the committee's reasoning for reducing Phoenix Park?
Well, these are staff recommendations, and if the committee still has to go ahead and make the final recommendation on that, so I don't want to sit there and make it sound like the committee did this. These were staff recommendations of what can we do to go ahead and reduce the price.
Okay, well then,
As far as
Why
the
did
staff,
staff-
why did we? I guess the only question that we had was, can we get it done for less? And if we can we go ahead then, if it's gonna be a new playground? I know often we're able to go ahead and get commitments from, whether it be Rotary, Optimus, or Lions Club to go ahead and help. We're not saying that the project may not be the total price of what Darren's proposing, but maybe we only partially fund it with the capital improvement sales tax and generate or leverage revenue with some of those service organizations for the rest. They do I will say this, it's a lot easier for me to go to those civic organizations and ask them for help with a new project versus going back to them and saying, hey, we need to redo rebuild these facilities or do what they may determine to be maintenance. And I know that we have a lot, and part of what we're talking about with the committee is the fact of we have to be very careful, as I don't need to tell this board, is the fact that, there's a lot of projects that people like to go ahead and do, and then the Parks Department gets saddled with going ahead and taking over maintenance of them. But I recognize that. I think that the committee is recognizing that, et cetera. So that's why a lot of emphasis has been, let's work with what we have and try to make that work. We know we got to redo the aquatic complex, but back to that, there's a lot of civic organizations that if you put in a new playground in a park that does not have one, my guess is we'll probably be able to go ahead and generate some revenue.
I understand that, but there's been a lot of constituents waiting 12-plus years for a park out there. That's where the growth is going, and we have several people every day calling, when are we going to get a playground? So it's my recommendation that if you can push as hard as possible on that project to not reduce it.
Wasn't the Phoenix project, though, wasn't that part of the restroom that was also being requested down there by the playground? Was that part of?
There would be, when we originally looked at that we'd be building a playground down there in that lower area, and there would have to be some type of restroom
Right.
facility as part of that.
So
You're correct.
is that possibly what was being shaved off there? And I don't know.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Could that have possibly been what was pared down from that original or not?
Yeah, to a degree. And
So
echo
it
what
could be
Darren,
possible
They have
that-
restrooms at the top of the hill.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So possibly the playground could still happen there.
and one thing about the way that, it's always evolving, but the way that the playground was proposed and looked at in the future, those of you who have been on the board that looked at the original plan out there, that there's some parts that could be done in phases and added on to as we move forward, because it was proposed to be a different type of playground than your typical playground. And like Darren said, if we could get some grants or matching funds from civic organization to do that, that'd be
And
ideal.
I understand all that. I just don't want this to be put on the back burner.
Right.
Because we've had a lot of people wanting this, and when those tennis courts were built out there, that was said at that time there was a playground going to be put out there, and never came. And so people could play tennis, their kids could be on a playground, win-win situation. We were also told at that time that we were going to do some kind of basketball, at least one hoop out there, part of the tennis courts type situation. We've never seen that. I just don't want this to be put on that's where it draws,
Well, what
just
do
don't
we
want
think
it to
we
be
can
put on
get
the
for
back.
250,000? I mean, I know it went from 500 to 250, but 250 is still a pretty significant number if we're gonna put a playground out there, and what you're saying, right? If we don't have to add restrooms, it's still feasible,
Yeah,
right?
we don't need, if they can't walk,
Restrooms are close enough, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
They're close, but one of the biggest complaints that you do receive from moms, small kids, that is, for them, that is a big distance at a playground, especially if you have two children there and one wants to play in the playground, the other one has to go to the bathroom. It's too far of a distance for them to walk by themselves. That's what I've heard, but not saying that you can't come back and do that later.
and there's no physical way of putting that playground up by the bathrooms.
There's not enough, there's not enough room up there.
I will say that I was doing the math on just what the park projects alone are, and it's 7.7 million out of what we anticipate of 15.1 million in projected revenues over that 8-year timeframe. So the lion's share, let me just say, is going towards park projects. I know you've got a long list. I know there's a lot of stuff, but
I know this board will say, we've been waiting a long time because I've been a liaison to the Parks Board for 8 years, and they have a list 30 pages long and always gets reduced down to half a page by the time the budget.
But Darren, I have a question too.
Yes.
What would happen if the Parks office moves to the auditorium,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't think is a bad thing? Would their office area become storage for all the equipment, which is
Yes.
extremely important? I mean,
Yes.
we've asked for storage for 15
this,
years.
that was a combination of things. That's why we looked at this as in that kind of concept,
Okay.
Tessie, was use the existing parks offices as one. I understand you probably need a little bit more office space there. So the employees that show up, they can still go to that place. You can go ahead and increase the covered bays for them to go ahead and do maintenance, but then also put out some type of structure that keeps a lot of the equipment out of the elements.
Okay.
So that was the thought process with that as well.
And a gate as well, right? Because you've been asking for a gate ever since you've been there. So people just don't dump and take whatever they want.
Yeah. Right.
And I just so I want to be very clear, that was just what, those were parks items that just the Parks Department requested. If you throw in what the Fair Board asked for and
Right.
then what American Legion,
Let's just have a heat.
then you're getting up there of, you're like another
Auditorium every
350
day.
on top of that, that's 8.1, and then you got 6. Not even talking about that multi-purpose building.
Right.
You're more like 8.6 million.
And I'll say, because I said this, I don't want them to cut the 500,000 out of the riverfront.
Well, I guess I guess the concern is, I understand the review. I mean, I understand trying to consolidate. I understand trying not to be greedy by any means. But I mean, if, as a board, we put together things that we think are necessary, and I know Darren represents us very well, but these are things that have been asked for a long time. So I mean, I don't want to be greedy, but you have all of these facilities that need to be taken care of, besides adding new ones. And I think we've been negligent not on taking care of it. So yeah, now all of a sudden we're asking for $8 million, and we're the bad guys because things in this city, you know, what department, they're all getting cut, but not enough help. We all know that. High expectations for what we want our parks and our trails and our buildings to look like, and no funding. So, I mean, when you get done with this half-cent sales tax and everything, I think some meetings should be held on how we can fix the budget so we have stuff in there for maintenance, so, you know, we're not cutting the riverfront. We're not some of it is maintenance, but we've asked for it for 20 years, and it never gets done. I'm not trying to be crabby, I'm just
I
saying
know,
that.
I understand that, and
It's very frustrating.
I get that.
And then we submit all this stuff, and then we hear what's being done, and it's like, well, that's not what we've been told. And it's not Darren, it's just like as a committee, what we work on, and then it goes out the door.
Right.
It's frustrating as a board.
I understand that. And like I said, I guess we do definitely want to go ahead and communicate, and after we do go through this process, yes, we can sit there and
Right,
talk
and
about
I
what
appreciate
needs-
you telling us all this tonight and coming. And I do wish, in one way, because I think the Fair Board's got some good ideas as well, I wish they would know to come, you know, so you do some of this together.
Right. Well, I thought it was important. I wanted to, as soon as the committee was formed and we started looking at projects, you know, I informed the mayor, I said, you know, we need to attend the Parks Board. We need to talk to them. This is the lion's share of these requests are coming
Yep.
from the Parks Department, so that's why I'm here tonight, and just to make sure this is what the thought process has been so far. But I know everybody's got busy schedules, but the committee has decided to go ahead and meet on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. Danny's been at all of them. Danny sits on the board. But we can go ahead and have, certainly, the entire public is welcome, and we've had, believe me, we've had a lot of viewpoints on with regards to the aquatic complex, and that's probably the biggest thing of what are we going to do to go ahead, and that's the elephant in the room, as far as
It
I'm
is.
concerned.
Okay, any other questions, thoughts?
I just want to say I agree with you 100%.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dick. Thanks. New business.
The first item that we have tonight is the disc golf recommendation. As you may recall, several months ago, this was brought up and the committee supported on moving forward with looking into the proposal that was submitted by the Lions and the Elks. Since that time, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes been done, and I'll let Sean step forward and if he wants to say a few words of where we're at.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we've been able to secure funding from the combination of the Lions and the Elks Club together of $20,000, which we plan to use to purchase baskets, benches, signs, concrete for tee pads, maybe landscaping supplies as needed, to be able to put in a disc golf course at Burger Park, which now that we've had a chance to actually get into the wooded areas, now that the leaves are off the trees and be able to see, it is even improving further. I think the park is going to make an excellent disc golf course, and it's going to get a lot of use. We're seeing a lot of growth in disc golf in the area, not only courses in Union and St. Clair. St. Clair course is expanding to 18 holes, and they're adding a course in Sullivan. So I think we will get a lot of traffic of local people from the county and surrounding areas coming in to play the course and visiting our city. So I hope you approve us to proceed.
Are we going to be able to put something visible from Highway 100 that people know?
Yes, we plan to have a sign facing the highway that says Washington Disc Golf Course. And also the layout of the course is such that we will have at least one basket and one tee box within easy sight of Highway 100. So as people are playing it, as you're going down the highway, you're going to see people up there throwing discs. It'll be very clear what it is and what it's for.
And in your packet, you have a conceptual plan of the layout of the disc golf course. One of the things that the committee's been talking about, staff talked about for a long time, and since this has been proposed, I think both of us has been asked, we're always preaching developing new things and how does that impact maintenance. Actually, disc golf is a very low impact activity which would have very little effect on our overall maintenance. And one of the things that Darren talked about, the half-cent sales tax, that we talked about Burger Park restoration, and part of that restoration was to convert most of our turf areas over to native grasses and stuff to reduce, for several things, reduce the mowing, everything that is an old landfill, it settles, and that's why we were going to remove the athletic fields we've talked about for years. But since that is being proposed to be reduced, we can look at grants, and well, we were going to continue to look for grants, but move forward with that. So it'd even be a lower impact. And as Sean and I have talked about, and there's been several other parks, and I believe the one in Columbia is that type of deal that you have holes cut through those types of areas. So it would be low impact. What we're asking for tonight is move forward as support to move on to council for us to move forward with the possible development of this course. And we're looking from a time frame over the next year, as I've talked to Sean, that we still, what I talked about in my parks report tonight, we still have other projects that we're working on, and we would like to complete those projects before we're able to move forward with starting another project. But I think it's very doable for us to move forward.
What would we do with the existing fencing up there, Darren?
What can be salvaged, we would salvage to possibly use for any other areas, if possible. Some of that stuff has been there for a long time. It's bent and might not be able to be salvaged, but and we'd sell that for.
All that would come out.
We'd sell that for
backstops,
scrap.
I think.
Yes, you're correct.
Recycling center.
Well, and I think you should be complimented that you've gone out and got the funding.
Thank you.
Which is how these things have to be currently, so that's very much appreciated. Well, I'm assuming that we need a motion to proceed?
That is correct.
Would they still be using the restrooms though down there on, by the skate park for that?
Yeah, the restrooms are there, which should be plenty close enough. When you're walking and playing disc golf, you're walking way further than that. So I think there was also the plan to hopefully have a porta-john up in the upper parking area, just as there has been for the baseball fields. I think would be more than sufficient.
Darren?
Yes.
Do we have a list? You had a list for a while for these memorial benches. People want to donate benches.
And that's one of the things that we have talked about by
So they could
opening
put
this,
bench-
this up for other use,
Nice.
opens up the possibility to do memorial benches in this
Yeah, well,
area as well.
I was just saving some money.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly what we are planning to pursue for any of those that we can. Another thing I wanted to mention too, as far as, obviously, maintenance costs is a thing to be considered. Not only will there be just kind of less overall required maintenance to keep a disc golf course in good operating condition, but the disc golf players themselves usually take a very, forward approach to helping maintain and keep the courses clean. It's very common for most courses to do one tournament a year that is specifically a fundraiser or a cleanup project, and then a tournament in the same day, that sort of thing. So it is, as opposed to many other, I guess, park locations, it is in many ways self-maintaining, so.
Any other questions? I need a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion. Approve.
I'll second it.
All right, Mike made the motion, Danny seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Sean.
Our next item is East Central College request to use the main stage and waive the fees. This is a group that's used the main stage for several years for some of their programs, and it's open to the general public. They have done a good job. This is very similar to some of the other groups that have requested this fee, like the theater group that has used it in the past. And so as part of our pricing and revenue policy, they'd have to come and make that request here tonight if it is supported by this group, and then it'd move on to the next level to City Council for their consideration. Like I said, this is something that does benefit the community, at least from our standpoint, that it is open and it is an event for the whole community.
Anybody have any questions?
So it is free to the public, it's not
Yes.
a paid?
Yeah, they've performed like the last 3 or 4 years. They do a very nice job. There's a
Is your
good
daughter-
turnout.
Is it your daughter involved with that, Tessa?
Not in the East Central, but the community theater.
Yeah, she does.
But the East Central requests that, they do a really nice job.
How many times will they utilize that a year?
Just one
They
time.
do
Oh,
it
just
once a
one
year.
time.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Do I hear a motion and a second? I have a motion by Bill,
I'll second it.
a second by Bob. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Tractor bid.
Yeah, the next item is a tractor bid. I'm kind of bringing this to you after the fact because there was a timing issue on that went to council the other night for approval, but I wanted to bring it in front of the committee since it is a high-ticket item. We are trading in a 1991 Case tractor, which has had some maintenance issues. Actually, it's a smaller tractor, less horsepower, so we needed something to run all of our attachments and implements on that. And there was a time window that this price was available to us for. As always, when we go out to bid for things and look at different replacements, we try to get the best price we can. We looked at the state bid, which only gave us a 17% discount, and through our membership with NJPA, we were able to get a 21% discount off that price, which shaved off quite a bit of money on that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Darren, what do you use that tractor for?
Um,
Brush hogging?
We use it for brush hogging. It has, you can use your front loader, and now they have a special attachment, a Bobcat attachment. So a lot of attachments that you can have on a Bobcat, we can have on this tractor. So when we get to some projects that we maybe need several pieces of equipment instead of having to going out and rent equipment, now with this tractor on some of those implements, we can use those same attachments. And we do have a pull-behind mower that we used on the Case, and if you're in cases that the grass is relatively short and they had enough horsepower, but if you got any growth on it, it would not really pull through it. So this tractor will be able to pull through it with no problem. Another thing is, and this isn't the main reason we bought it, but just one of the side benefits is when we do the senior event out at the lake, and we do the tours on the trams and stuff like that. At times we have to rent or try to get donated tractors with the horsepower to pull that. This would have that, and so that would eliminate us having to go out and spend any other additional funds for that, but
So you don't need a motion on this because.
no, this has already been, I just want to bring it to your attention that the reason it didn't come here first was just because of the timing factor, and we were limited with that price on,
I
on what we
assume
can
we
do.
don't have any place to store it.
Not at this time.
Not at this time.
Your house.
You got a big garage?
Okay, mower bid.
On the mower bid, this is a replacement of an existing wide area mower. It's similar to ones that we had purchased in the past through Toro. This is also one that we looked at state contracts, we look at other things, and we are also a member of another group, an IPA contract group, and we are able to get a discounted price on this. We had $71,000 budgeted for this, and the price has come in at $63,500, and this is with a trade-in of our old mower for $3,000.
Any questions?
Can we salvage the old one for 1 year and use that money to make roofs on the pavilions and get it next year?
We have salvaged this piece of equipment for several years, and actually, I'm surprised that we're getting any money out of it.
So this is
It-
one of two of the Batwing mowers, correct?
Yeah, it's one of several that we had. And actually, this is one that was actually replaced years ago, and we always hold one back as an extra that we use when one maybe break down, or, and it's usually in the spring, we have to use everything we get because the grass is growing so much. And this is one that's been held over for years, and as we have added acreage to our park system and everything else, we've Band-Aided it as far as we can Band-Aid it without sinking lots of money into it. So really, we.
All in favor? Okay, pool proposal.
Well, as you may recall, that has done the contractual operations of our pool. A request for proposals, we asked for, opposed to past years, are compared to the past. And their maximum not to exceed amount on lifeguards is actually down almost $12,000 on that price, but that has always been a fluctuating price. It's not a set fee. What we have, as you can see in the thing, it goes to your hourly staff rates for your managers, assistant managers, lifeguards, and swim directors and instructors, is that's just based as a need thing. So if we get a day and the temperatures aren't high and we decide to close the pool, we're not charged for those lifeguards or any of those uses. The same way if it happens to rain or lightning, storm, those sorts of things. So what we had looked on that maximum not to exceed is pretty much if we were open every single day of the year of that pool term, that's what that, I don't know why, assistant managers have actually gone down close to $3. Lifeguards have gone up, probably about 55 has gone down by 3 cents, and swim lesson instructor has remained the same. Another price that you'll see in here that they threw in and that we were exploring is, in some cases, and somebody was hiring those people in-house and that kind of stuff. So it is something that we can explore, and I've had people ask me that if we were to build a new pool, would we take that operations in-house? And it's always something that we can look at. I think right now to try to do something for this next year, there's not enough time between now and then to really get into that. But I think for in the future, that is something that we surely can address if directed to do so.
It'd be worth throwing some numbers around.
For sure, right.
And also, Darren, so you gave us one number, was this amount, they were this much cheaper this year, then there were this, and that. So basically, bottom line, because one was like a $12,000 savings and one was a $5,000, so, but then one was $3,000 more, so what?
I think overall, we're looking at pretty much close to break even of what we were paying in the past year. I mean,
So
plus
really
or minus
no-
$1,000, $2,000, just depending on what we
So
what we
no
look
really
at. So
increase.
it's really not a big increase.
There's no roof in there.
Right, right.
Any other questions? Well, then we need a motion to send this on to the council. I have a question. I just want to be sure I'm clear on this, that we have, so this 218, 219, 220, is, it's not a 3-year bid. It's a 1-year bid with the possibility of extending it 2 more years.
That is correct.
So I just want to be sure we all know what we're voting on. It's not a 3-year bid, it's 1 year, and then depending, the extension goes for, okay.
Yes.
I need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion.
All right, I have a motion by Bob and a second by Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Tree inventory proposal.
Okay, as you may recall, the city from time to time that we go out and look at grant opportunities and what we need to do. And mainly, we've been working with the Urban Forestry Council on this, and we applied for a trim grant through the Missouri Department of Conservation for the purpose of doing an inventory of all of our trees throughout the city, was our goal. As you may recall, some of those have been around for a while. Back in 2007, the city had received that same trim grant, but only a partial inventory was done at that time of only a few parks, and that has worked out well for doing some other grants and some other things. However, it was not a complete inventory, and it wasn't detailed to some of the things that we needed. So as such, we applied for a grant through them, and we were one of a handful of cities that pretty much received the full amount that we asked for. And what we're looking to do in this, since we have no idea how many trees are in our city, it's, you know, we're looking to get as much done as we possibly can. But we went out for an RFP on this, and we sent it out to like 4 different firms. However, we only had 1 response by our deadline, and that was through the Davie Resource Group. This is the same group that did it back in 2007. And in meeting with them and looking at this, we tried to come up with what we could do. They're looking to do a computerized inventory of up to 5,000 existing trees. Through our discussions, and what we were looking to do is hit the parks first and try to get all of our parks done. Then after we do parks, we can go back and look at other city facilities such as the City Hall complex, fire stations, some street trees. We have very few street trees in the city, but start looking at those and start with our parks first, most likely working from the west side of town, moving east since our bigger parks and everything are on the west side. And these would only be the formal areas of parks, not the forested areas of parks, because that would take up our whole 5,000 trees right away. And forest areas are managed totally different than the formal areas. Also a part of that is they would be individual park summaries. And basically what they do on this inventory is they would tell you the type of tree, the size of the tree, conditions of the trees, those sort of things that would come out with that. Also, as part of the grant, it has to meet certain requirements of computer GIS, and there will be a program. It is a cloud-based program, so there's no additional servers or hardware or anything that the city must purchase for this. It's all held on their information. However, the city can be able to log into it, so every time we remove a tree, add a tree, any of those sorts of things, we could be using this program and this data to do that with. The other things that we have talked about, especially the Urban Forestry Council, and you may have heard, is the emerald ash borer. It is a pest that's killing all the ash trees around. And
Software bid.
what this is, right now we're using a product called RecTrack that the city has used for a number of years to do all of our recreation program registrations, our facility reservations, those sort of things. However, it's not compatible with our current finance software, which is Tyler, nor does it allow us to do any kind of online registrations or credit card registrations. And this has been kind of a long-term plan that we've been discussing for many years, that right now, you know, at our parks office, we cannot or do not accept credit cards or debit cards. So it is an inconvenience to the residents that a lot of people have to leave and go to ATM.
Kind of ridiculous.
They do. So
I mean, everybody pays with a credit card now.
So what we are looking at is moving forward so that we can do those sort of things. And we've been looking at different programs that would allow us to do that. And what we have found is Tyler has a Parks and Recreation module that goes with our finance package. My staff has reviewed it, looked at it, and it can do everything that our current program does and more. And it was identified in this year's budget. It is budgeted for. We'd just like to get moving forward on this as soon as possible to implement this.
Well, if it's already in the budget, I don't think, any discussion? I don't think there would be. So do we have a motion to approve in a second, please?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
All
second
right.
it.
So Bob made the motion, Mike seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. All
I
right.
do have one other item, not for you to approve, but just a FYI, that'll be coming up in one of our near future meetings. We're looking at the replacement of 2 of our bucket trucks. We have a large and a small bucket truck. We are looking at that, and we've been exploring different avenues of doing that. There are 2 companies that are the main suppliers of those, and both of them belong to different cooperative purchasing agreements. We are looking at and trying to compare apples to apples right now from one company to the other to make sure that we get what we want. And so we'll be bringing that forward here at a meeting probably within the next month or so.
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
How many bucket trucks does the city have?
2.
Okay.
Is there any new business or anything anybody would like to bring up?
I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Talking to somebody, and they asked me, and I probably should have been able to answer this, but I wasn't. They asked me, what do we get from the Fair Board? No,
Oh,
for their use of the park.
Darren can probably better explain.
We have an agreement with them for several services, including parks, with regards to labor, that we go ahead and send. I'd have to get you those numbers, Bill. I mean, I can go ahead and get.
Well, one of the, but it's also a benefit because some of those buildings are used and some of those things have been used for the public. I mean, that's just part of it, but,
Well, and not just buildings, but concrete pads.
right,
electricity.
year-round.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's not like it's free.
No,
But in the other hand, the cities help pay for some of those buildings that just are used for the fair as well.
Right, that was kind of my side of thinking too.
Well, to answer that to a certain degree, on our fees and charges policy that this group adopted and the council has adopted it as a guide, there are several different things on how to waive fees or use fees, and some of that is sponsoring, co-sponsoring, and one is facilitated. The fair, for all the years, has been looked at, it's a facilitated. The city doesn't sponsor the fair, it's through the Chamber of Commerce, but we have facilitated with our facilities. And some of the comments that you have made, that's the reason why, because there were benefits from buildings or other things. That's
And
how
Friends
it's-
of the
That's
Park
how it's
would-
been looked at in the past.
Wouldn't that fall in there too? Friends of the Park, since they,
No.
no?
Friends of the Parks is where if I'm in my will, I want to donate X amount of money to Friends of the Park, and then, maybe I want to, when the time comes here, and then, well, you know what I mean? And but
Whoa.
that's not the same as
Well, I thought
what
of a
he's
civil,
asking.
like I belong to the Lions Club, and I thought if we give so much, then if we want to rent something, that's the way it always,
Yeah, our current Friends of the Park, the way the ordinance is written, if there's a civic organization,
Oh, I'm
organization or
sorry.
even individual
Yeah, you're-
that donates
Sorry.
at least a minimum of $5,000
Right,
I'm
per
sorry,
year,
sorry,
gets a
you're right.
thrown
discounted.
into the Friends of the Park, being the
rental rate.
services they give.
right. Sorry, I
well.
was going a different way. Okay,
I mean, you could still donate.
right. Oh, we will.
I mean,
John-
it's a done deal.
He can write the check when the meeting's over. No problem. Okay, other questions, Bill?
Yeah, well, I've got one other, but how feasible would it be, we're talking about maintenance on different things, how feasible would it be to set up some kind of a thing for people who use the playgrounds to be able to put a donation into a steel can or something to be used towards the maintenance of those playgrounds?
I'm not opposed to anyone donating funds, but I think by putting anything out there, it'd be something that would be vandalized or
You can get things
Or
that are
stolen,
hard
so.
to vandalize.
Well, and if I can chime in this, I don't want to sound negative, but Bill, I believe you were on this board at the time when I came on 8 years ago, matter of fact. I suggested charging a rental fee for the pavilions. So one, you don't have to go out there at 1 o'clock in the morning and reserve it. Number two, as I wanted that money, and that's why we came up with a minimum charge, and this was before Darren's term, to put aside and to be used for maintenance, $25. That's why we came up with a small fee. I can tell you how much the park has seen of that $25. And I can tell you it's about the shape of a goose egg. So I don't know where that $25 goes, but I've asked city staff several times where that $25 each time I rents that pavilion so we can put new roofs, put electric on in them, yada, 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 make it more beneficial for people. And all I hear is, oh, so those are things that we need to work on more. And we do have a new city staff. These are things that we need to put together more.
I think if people would like to give a donation to anything to help improve areas in the park, they could go to the park office and do it. I can tell you that being on the park board for a long time, all right, and you say that you don't think, you know, we build a bathroom, we put what we think is the strongest toilet, the strongest sink that you've ever seen, you spend a fortune on it, and it's damaged. If you had any kind, I truly do believe, any kind of a donation box anywhere around those parks, it's gonna go. It's gonna be damaged. And so I think that the idea of donating, we've been trying to do that with our 501.
We've got it set up. We
Yep.
just need to get it
It just
promoted.
needs, we've got avenues, but I don't think you put a container out in the park because it's not gonna last. No, I'm telling you, I guarantee you it won't.
You took a steel,
I can guarantee you we had a steel toilet and it didn't last. I can tell you, I guarantee you it won't last.
Called four-wheel drive pickup truck.
Yep. It's called in the middle of the night when nobody's there and the park gets damaged. Now we go in splurts, so it's been good for a while. I know, not good. But I love the idea, but I
Bill,
just don't think you.
need to use your steel post and the strongest sign you have
And-
that spells out the fact that you can donate to the parks.
To the parks.
It's part of the
At the-
501c3, so it's tax exempt.
Yep.
Help you out on your taxes.
Or go to the
Donate,
park
you can
office.
Use it for that.
Yep.
And those people who would drop money in a box will go out and maybe
They will.
give a donation, and we would be advantageous in that standpoint.
And one of the things that we're looking to do, we have talked about at a past meeting and talked to Mike prior to the meeting tonight, that we're going to try here in January to try to get that group back together and a little more organized.
Yeah.
And through this half-cent capital improvement process, we had an open house over a week ago, and we had several individuals that came up and expressed interest in either serving on the board or doing something to volunteer
Good.
to help move this forward. So
That's what we
we're
need.
moving in that direction.
Good.
And with our new software, we'll be able to take credit cards.
That is correct.
That's good. That's good.
credit cards are out now, PayPal.
PayPal.
Oh,
Well, we're catching.
well,
We're getting
we're
baby steps.
a little slow.
Baby steps.
Any other questions, concerns you'd like to bring up this evening? If not, our next meeting is scheduled for January 11th, and the Park Board would like to wish everybody in the community a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I need a motion
I
to
would like to
adjourn.
say something first.
Oh, I just asked. Okay, go ahead.
I would like to congratulate you on your new position.
It's temporary. Sparky will be back next month.
Assistant is not temporary.
Can I have a motion and a second to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by Bob and a second by,
I'll second it.
thanks, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Nice job, Marky.
I got to ride up to the,
See you sometime.